On the 7th night of the dry moon she walked into the river, and never came out. They say it happened just before dawn. The village still cloaked in darkness. The drums had long fallen silent. Even the crickets held their breath. Her name was Amara, the girl who turned away kings. The one who smiled as warriors fell to their knees and said, "No," like it was a prayer she'd mastered since birth. They found her footprints at the river's edge. Small, bare, unrushed. As if she wasn't fleeing, but going somewhere she had already chosen. There were no signs of struggle. No torn cloth. No blood. Only her white wrapper folded neatly on the ground with 3 cowries placed on top. The villagers gathered in silence. Women held their children close. The elders stared at the river but said nothing. And the men, especially the ones she had once rejected, stood still, unsure whether to mourn or to fear. Because Amara didn't leave like someone escaping danger. She left like someone answering a call. What kind of call pulls a woman from her bed in the middle of the night? What kind of invitation is made with no words, no witnesses, no return? Some whispered she had finally been claimed, not by man but by something else. Something that had waited. Something that had watched. Because Amara wasn't like the other girls in the village. She didn't beg for love. She didn't lower her eyes when men passed. She didn't dance at festivals, not even when the drums beat her name into the earth. She carried herself like a queen in a world that had not yet built her a throne. And the village didn't know what to do with that. They called her proud. They called her cursed. Some even said she was born of the river itself, that no human woman could be so bold and so untouched. But one by one they tried to tame her. A prince arrived with golden anklets from across the great desert. She sent him home with dust on his face. A merchant offered her silks from the east, 10 goats and a plot of land. She asked him if he thought love could be bought like palm oil. A warrior, tall and fearless, carved her name into his chest and stood outside her compound for 7 nights. She poured cold water on his head and told him to bathe properly. And then there was Obi, the fisherman. The only man who never asked for her heart but gave her his anyway. She smiled at him. But even he was not enough. Each rejection echoed louder than the last. And each time the river was there. Quiet. Still. Listening. She used to bathe in its shallow ends, alone at dawn. She used to speak to it, or so the children claimed. They said they saw her mouth moving though no one was near. They said the water sometimes shimmered when she laughed. But no one believed them. Not then. It wasn't until that 7th night, when Amara disappeared without a single cry, that people began to remember the warnings the ancestors left behind. That the river Ibena does not forget those who mock its silence. That it chooses what it wants, when it wants, and takes it quietly. Now, years later, her name is still forbidden during certain moons. Her story is told in hushed voices by firelight. And when the river floods or a woman's laughter echoes too sweetly across the water, mothers clutch their daughters and say, "Remember Amara. She rejected every man, and so the river chose her." Her name was Amara. First daughter of Ikioma the traitor, last child of the once feared matriarch Mama Ifyananya. Born on the 3rd day of the Harmattan wind, under the full gaze of a crimson moon, the kind of moon elders say is both a blessing and a warning. Even as a child there was something about her. At 5 she refused to cry when she fell. At 7 she stared down a cobra that slithered into the compound. By 10 she had outsmarted the village priest in a riddle contest. The villagers used to joke. That one was born with cola in her mouth and thunder in her eyes. She was the girl who never ran from the rain, who sat beside the river for hours, speaking to no one but the wind. Her mother, a widow, raised her with silence and salt, strong hands, firm voice, no softness spared. Some say that made Amara too sharp, too wild. Others say that was how she survived in a village where women were only seen when men allowed them to be heard. But Amara, she was seen whether invited or not. By 16, her name was carried on the backs of praise singers, and not always with kindness. Beautiful, yes, but dangerous, they'd say. Eyes like charcoal fire, but no warmth in her chest. She wore coral beads that caught the sun and gold wrappers imported from across the water. Gifts from foreign suitors. Not one of them ever stayed long. She had no husband. No fiancé. Not even a lover. Not because they didn't ask. Because they did. Oh, they did. There was the crown prince of Ukata. His convoy filled 3 compounds with palm wine, yams, and silks. He arrived with drummers and dancers, declaring Amara would become his queen. She looked him up and down, turned her back, and walked into her hut without a word. The very next morning he left. Shame. His guards wouldn't meet his eyes. Then came a wealthy merchant from across the river. He claimed he could give her a mansion with white stone floors. Said she'd never have to fetch water again. She asked him, "Will your stones teach me joy? Will your riches know how to listen?" He had no answer. He too left. There was even a warrior. Muscles like ironwood. Skin painted with sacred ash. He knelt for 3 days outside her door in fasting. On the 4th day, Amara opened the door and gave him a single word. "Leave." And so the village whispered. Under baobab trees and beside kitchen fires. In the market. In the fields. She must be cursed. Too proud for her own good. No woman turns down that many blessings without paying a price. But Amara walked the dusty paths with her chin high, waist beads clicking softly beneath her wrapper, never once lowering her gaze. She refused to be claimed. Refused to be conquered. Refused to be reduced. Her mother would scold her in private, warn her to be careful. The world is not gentle with women who say no too loudly, Amara. But Amara would only smile and say, "Let the world try me." And the world listened. Or perhaps it wasn't the world at all. Perhaps it was the river. Abena. The river that wrapped around their village like a watchful snake. Wide, quiet, and always listening. The river that had watched Amara since she was a child. She would sit at its edge at dusk, dipping her feet into the cool current, whispering things no one else heard. Some say the water would glow around her. Others say the fish gathered where she sat. But she never spoke of it. Not to her mother. Not to the girls who envied her. Not even to Obi, the only man who didn't ask for anything from her. She called him friend, though his eyes held something deeper. He brought her mangoes during the dry season, told her stories he heard from fishermen at the docks. She laughed when she was with him, the only time her voice carried joy. But even Obi, kind and patient, never crossed the line. Even he knew. Amara belonged to no one. And yet, in the stillness of the night, when even the goats had stopped bleating and the owls grew quiet, Amara would walk, past the yam fields, past the shrine stones, all the way to the river, alone. And the water would greet her, in its own way. Soft waves. A strange shimmer. A faint hum no one else seemed to hear. Some say she was only looking for peace. Others say she was searching for something greater than the men she left behind. But the elders? The elders say something was watching her too. And it wasn't a man. And it wasn't love. The days grew hotter. The air thicker. The skies more restless. And Amara, proud, beautiful Amara, remained unmoved. More suitors arrived, each more desperate than the last. One came riding a black stallion with a blade forged in a foreign land. Another brought dancers who performed under the moonlight for 3 nights straight. One offered her a chest of rubies and promised to carve her name into the palace gates. But Amara turned each one away like smoke from a dying fire. Some left humiliated, their pride bruised before half the village. Others left angry, cursing her name under their breath. Still she smiled. Not cruelly, not joyfully. Just unbothered. As if their efforts were drops of rain on a mountain stone. But the village had grown tired of her refusals. Especially the elders. Men with gray beards and minds burdened by old beliefs. They gathered one night under the oldest tree near the shrine and spoke in quiet voices. "She has dishonored the right of womanhood," one said. "She insults the ancestors by refusing to be led into a man's home," said another. One elder, his voice dry and brittle, asked a question that made the others fall silent. "And what if she is being watched by something older than all of us?" A silence followed. And it hung over the village like smoke the next morning. Even the market women began to murmur. Even the children stopped teasing her name and started avoiding her shadow. Only her mother dared to confront her. One morning she entered Amara's hut without knocking, her face pale, her wrapper undone at the waist. She had dreamt of a woman in white. Not dressed in fabric, but made entirely of mist and moonlight. She stood in the river, arms open, humming a song without words. Behind her, the water rose not with waves but with faces, hundreds of them, watching. Waiting. And Amara was walking toward her. Slowly. Without fear. Without shoes. When the mother woke, her chest was heavy. And when she looked at her daughter now, standing before her mirror, braiding her hair in silence, she felt something shift. "The river is calling you, Amara." Amara paused just briefly, then smiled. But it wasn't the smile of arrogance. It was the smile of someone who had already heard the same call, and was pretending not to. "The river calls everyone mama. It's just water." But that same night, the water stirred. Obi, the boy from the riverbanks, the one whose love was silent. He came to her door just before sunset, carrying a small gift, a wooden comb he had carved by hand, smoothed with river stones, oiled with shea from his grandmother's grove. He held it out, eyes down, voice shaking. "I made this, for you." Amara looked at the comb, then at him. And for a moment her face softened. But then, she laughed. A short, sharp laugh, not cruel but dangerous. Like a mask cracking at the edges. She took the comb, walked past him, and tossed it into the river. The sound it made, a small splash, shouldn't have meant anything. But the water bubbled. Just once. Loud enough for Obi to hear. Loud enough to freeze the air between them. He turned away, and never came back. And from that night forward, the river changed. It began with her reflection. One dawn, she crouched at the river's edge to wash her feet. But her reflection didn't move when she did. It stared back, unblinking, as if it no longer belonged to her. Then came the snake. A slender green serpent that followed her from the yam fields, all the way to the back of her hut. It didn't hiss. It didn't strike. It only watched. And then, the dreams. The first dream came gently, like a whisper through tall grass. She was walking through fog. Everything around her was silver and slow. And there, standing waist-deep in water, was a man. His skin shimmered like wet clay. His eyes were bright, glowing silver. He said nothing, just extended his hand. When she woke, her fingers were damp, and there were wet footprints leading from her mat to the window. The second dream was stronger. This time she stood in the river. The current circled her ankles like warm hands. The man was closer now. He spoke one word. Soon. She awoke gasping, the sound of rushing water still echoing in her ears, but her mat was dry. And yet, her wrapper was soaked through. From that night forward, the drums in the village sounded distant to her. The laughter of the other girls felt like static. Even the sun felt dimmer. She would walk to the river more often now. Not to speak, not to bathe, just to stand. So, waiting. The villagers noticed, and the elders grew afraid. Not because they knew what was coming, but because whatever it was had already begun. It happened on a night when the moon did not rise. The stars were veiled behind thick clouds. The wind had gone still. Even the palm trees refused to sway. And then, a sound. Soft at first, like a breath over dry leaves. Then fuller, warmer, melodic, the song. But not in any tongue known to the village. No language passed down from the griots or sung at naming ceremonies. It was older, ancient, watery. It came from the river, from Ibena. Amara sat up in her hut, eyes wide. The song called to her, not with words, but with memory. She rose slowly, her wrapper clinging to her skin as if trying to hold her back. Her feet moved before her mind did. She stepped into the night. The path was clear. No frogs croaked. No insects sang. The world was watching. When she reached the riverbank, the air thickened. Mist curled like fingers around her ankles. The song grew louder, fuller. It pulsed with her heartbeat. And then, she saw him. Standing in the shallows, waist-deep in the dark water, was a man. He was tall, bare-chested, skin the color of damp earth. And his eyes, silver, not gray, not white. Silver, like moonlight trapped behind a storm. He said nothing at first, just looked at her. Not with hunger, not with praise, but with recognition. As if he had known her name long before her mother ever whispered it. When he finally spoke, his voice was like water over stone, smooth, deep, deliberate. "You hear me now." Amara opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. She felt as if every language she had learned had been taken from her in that moment. Still, her body did not move to run. Her eyes did not blink. Her feet stayed rooted to the soil. "You've come every day," he continued, "and yet you've never seen me. Until now." Amara swallowed. "Who are you?" He smiled. It wasn't warm. It wasn't cruel. Just was. "The one your pride called. The one your silence summoned." He stepped forward, but only as far as the water would allow. It lapped at his waist like it didn't dare let him go. "You called me when you said no to men who did not see your spirit. You woke me when you refused to bow to a world that fears a woman who owns herself." Amara's breath trembled. "You are the river?" He nodded once. "I am what listens beneath it." From that night on she returned. Every night, like a woman walking in her sleep. And he was always there, waiting, in the same spot. Never closer, never further. She never asked his name. He never asked for hers. And yet they spoke for hours. He told her stories she'd never heard, of spirits that guard forgotten trees, of stones that remember the feet of kings, of women who once ruled the waters before men carved kingdoms on land. And she listened, truly listened. For the first time she felt understood, not desired. Seen, not judged. He never tried to touch her. Never asked for her heart. He only said, "If you choose me, come when the moon is full. In white. Alone." But nothing hides from a mother. Amara's mother saw the change. The faraway look in her eyes. The smile she tried to suppress. The way her feet moved too quickly at night. So she followed. And what she saw made her heart drop like a gourd from a tree. Her daughter. At the riverbank. Smiling. Speaking to nothing. The river shimmered, but no man was there. She ran to the elders. Begged them to intervene. One elder, the oldest among them, did not speak. He only wept. When he finally found his voice, he told the tale. An old one. Long buried. There was once a maiden, he said, beautiful and bold like fire. She mocked the gods with her pride. Refused every man with a laugh. And so the river took her, not in anger but in balance. Because nature cannot bear what it cannot match. And so the river gave her its own. He looked at Amara's mother with heavy eyes. Your daughter walks the path of the taken. Her mother confronted her. Pleaded. Cried. Threatened. Told her of the stories. Of the spirits. Of the warnings carved in stone. Amara only shook her head. He does not ask to own me. He does not fear my voice. He listens. Her mother slapped her. What? Amara did not flinch. She simply whispered, You call him spirit. I call him peace. And still she returned. Night after night. Wrapped in white. Feet bare. And the man with the silver eyes was always waiting. Always watching. But he never stepped out of the water. Not once. Because he couldn't. And she hadn't yet chosen to go in. The moon was approaching fullness. The nights grew heavier. And the river no longer whispered, it waited. But something, or someone, had not yet released her. The first to notice was a child who ran into the village shouting, Obi is back. Obi the fisherman. But now he carries a spear. He had returned not as the quiet boy from the riverside, but as a man changed. His chest bore tribal marks from a warrior clan beyond the hill lands. His eyes no longer trembled. And behind him were stories of battles won, oaths taken, kingdoms crossed. But he had returned for only one thing. Amara. He heard the rumors. He saw the fear. He stood before her hut that evening, the same place she once laughed at his gift, and he said nothing of the past. He simply said, They say you speak to the river now. But I came back to speak to you. Amara stood in silence. She had not expected to feel her chest ache at the sight of him. But it did. Obi reached for her hand just once. You don't belong to him, he said. You belong here. With breath. With heartbeat. With people. With me. But she pulled away. Gently. Slowly. And then for the first time, she lied. There is nothing waiting for me here. That night, the river sang again. The man with silver eyes was waiting. This time he was not waist deep. He stood on the edge, arms open. His voice was calm. The time has come. He told her the veil between worlds was thin now. That a gate would open beneath the river's skin. That she could pass through, if she chose. But only willingly. Only in white. Only under the full moon. I will not take you, he said. You must step in on your own. And if you do, you will never kneel to anyone again. He promised her freedom. Power. A place beside him in a world beyond pain, beyond judgment. You will become one with the water. You will be untouchable. Eternal. Amara returned home in silence. She sat before her clay lamp until the flame went out. Obi waited outside her hut all night, sitting by the doorway. He said nothing. He didn't need to. But his presence wrapped her like a memory she didn't want to forget. By morning she was gone. No one saw her leave. No one heard her steps. The villagers gathered on the bank that night. They had felt it, all of them. The air trembled. The water glowed. And from the darkness came a woman, clothed in white. Amara. She wore a wrapper of woven silk, glowing faintly under the moon. Cowries at her wrists. Red earth on her forehead. Bare feet. She did not cry. She did not look back. Obi was there. So was her mother. So were the elders. The spirit waited in the water. So, silver-eyed. Amara stepped forward. The first foot touched the water. Then the second. With each step the current grew stronger. Yet she did not stumble. She did not waver. When the water reached her waist she turned once, just once, to the shore. Her eyes met Obi's. And in that moment, 1,000 words passed between them. Regret. Love. Goodbye. Then, silence. No wind. No sounds. And then she stepped beneath. The water swelled, rose high, and then crashed down. In her place, a single golden fish leapt into the air. It shimmered like fire, twisted once, then disappeared beneath the surface, and the river was still again. The villagers stood frozen. Some dropped to their knees. Others wept. But no one spoke. Obi walked to the edge, looked into the dark water. But there was no trace, not even a ripple. A year passed, and the village changed. The skies no longer rained when they were supposed to. The yams rotted in the earth. The river rose higher with each moon, stretching past its usual bounds like a body awakening from sleep. The drums stopped sounding joyful. The festivals lost their color. Even the children no longer sang near the water's edge. Some said the gods were angry. Others believed the village had broken something sacred. But the elders knew. They said nothing aloud. But they gathered under the baobab tree more often now. And their prayers lasted longer. One night, during the season of the hungry winds, the river rose without warning. It swelled like breath caught in a throat. Dark, furious, endless. It swallowed fences, creep up to the compound walls. The sky thundered, but no rain fell. The people gathered on the hill. They lit fire bowls and called the ancestors by name. Mothers clutched children. Fathers stood helpless. And then, a cry. A child was missing. A small boy, no more than 5, had wandered too close to the riverbank in the chaos. The current was rushing. The trees bent low. The village called his name, over and over. No answer. Only wind. And water. She returns. Then suddenly, the water stopped, frozen, mid-surge. And there, standing in the shallows just where the moonlight kissed the surface, was a woman. Her wrapper flowed like mist. Her skin glowed faintly gold. And her eyes, silver. In her arms, the missing child. He was asleep. Smiling. The villagers dared not move. Not even the wind dared to speak. She looked at them, all of them, but did not speak. Her eyes found one face in the crowd. Obi. He stepped forward, slowly. But before he could speak, she vanished. The water stirred once, and was calm again. The next morning, Obi walked the riverbank in silence. He did not speak to the elders. He did not answer the curious stares. He walked until he reached the same spot where he once stood years ago when she laughed at his offering. And there, lying on the wet sand, was a comb. The same one. Smooth with river stone. Etched with a forgotten symbol. He knelt, picked it up, and wept. Not in sorrow, but in understanding. They say the spirit of Ibena married her. Not out of punishment, not out of vengeance, but out of balance. She rejected men not because she was wicked, but because her heart beat differently. She was born for more than kitchens and dowries. And so, the river, ancient and listening, gave her a place no man could offer. She watches now, protects, guides. She became what they feared, and what they needed. And that is why no child may swim in Ibena without first whispering her name. And why every daughter is now told, your voice is your power, do not silence it even if the world cannot yet understand. The river never returned to its former silence. Not entirely. Though its banks held still and its waters ran smooth, there was always something. A shimmer on the surface. A soft breath beneath the reeds. A presence. And so, the people changed. They built no more homes too close to Ibena. They poured libations every new moon and whispered Amara's name before washing their faces at dawn. The young men were taught to offer, not expect. The young women were taught that saying no is not defiance, it is clarity. And that some spirits are not to be tamed, only honored. Obi never married. He grew older, yes, his hair faded to gray, his shoulders lost their strength. But his eyes, they held something that even the elders respected. A secret that wasn't sadness. A grief that wasn't heavy. A memory that lived like fire in his chest. He would sit by the fireside in the evenings, children gathered at his feet, eyes wide, waiting. And he would begin, always the same way. She walked into the river, and never came out. But she never truly left. And they would listen. Breathless. Silent. He told them of a woman born under a red moon, with laughter like broken mirrors and eyes that burned like coals. Of a maiden who bowed to no one, who feared nothing, who walked between worlds without losing her way. And when the fire burned low and the stars blinked above them, he would say, if ever you see the river shimmer, do not fear. She's only watching. Only remembering. On some nights, only when the moon is high and full, laughter can be heard from the water. Soft, sweet, unmistakable. Some say it's just the wind. Others believe she returns to dance on the riverbed. A few, the old and brave, have claimed to see her walking the shore in white, her feet never touching the earth, her eyes still shining silver. No one dares mock her name now. No one scoffs at dreams too big or women too bold. Pride may blind the eyes, but the heart knows its path. Sometimes the wildest spirit must meet its equal, not in a man but in a mystery. And sometimes, the greatest love is the one that asks for nothing, but is remembered forever. Now tell me, what would you have done if you were Amara? Would you have stayed, chosen breath, fire, and flesh? Or would you have stepped into the river, chasing freedom, mystery, and a love not bound by the world we know? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Tell us what you felt. Tell us what you would choose. And if this story touched your soul, if it stirred something deep within you, then share it. Pass it on like the folktales our ancestors whispered under moonlight. And don't forget to subscribe to Timeless Epic Folktales, where every story carries a lesson, and every lesson lingers, long after the tale is done.